Today. We understand that Mayor Francis Suarez will speak first, and then we'll have more from some of the folks from the community, the pastors, and then they're going to wrap up with the police chief, George Kalina. We're presumably going to speak about what happened last night, the absolute chaos that broke out last night. Obviously, those protests started off very peacefully about 3 o'clock yesterday at the Torch of Friendship. They then began to march, made their way up to I-95, shutting down both north and southbound lanes of I-95 downtown Miami. Let's take a listen to Mayor Francis Suarez.
Chief, you ready? Yes, sir. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. As we know, our community and our country is grieving the despicable acts, the hateful acts that took the life of George Floyd. The officer that committed that act has been arrested, and the 3 officers that prevented that death from occurring should also face similar justice. I want to thank the members of our faith community for their prayers and support, and I want to thank the members of the Miami Police Department who demonstrated incredible restraint and resolve in the face, of provocative acts and personal attacks over the past day. Public service is a public trust, and we thank them for demonstrating that restraint in a very stressful environment. I want to thank my commissioners, almost every single one of them which are here and have been supportive throughout this entire process, not just through COVID, but last night I got messages and calls of support from all of them, and they're all here today. I want to thank our city manager. I want to thank our great police chief who did a magnificent job last night, Chief Kalina. I'm confident that working together as a community and as a country and as a world, that we will get through these difficult times and do right by our citizens. I want to acknowledge so many people who are here today. I'm not going to try to call them out by name because I know I'm going to forget someone. But in particular, I want to acknowledge the Rodney and Christine Belmood from the Citizens Investigation Panel. We in the city have chosen to empower our residents to provide oversight over our police department, something that other jurisdictions have not done. When I was a commissioner, I cast a deciding vote to fire a police chief that had implemented policies that led to the death of 7 African Americans in 1 year in our community. As Martin Luther King once said, and I know we've heard a lot of Dr. King in the last few days, hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Injustice cannot drive out injustice. Only the rule of law can do that. Bigotry cannot drive out bigotry. Only respect and righteous restraint can do that. Starting last night, we activated a curfew to start a cool-off period to protect our residents and businesses. The length of the cool-off period will be determined by the facts on the ground. Tonight, the curfew begins at 8 p.m. and will be strictly enforced. 8 p.m. means that you can be out until right before it gets dark. You can peacefully protest, as many people did yesterday. I'm very proud of the many Miamians that lined these streets that are right behind us and peacefully protested what has been a heinous act that has opened a wound in our country and in our community. We will protect our residents, their safety, and the right to enjoy their city. We will continue to root out bias and bigotry in all forms, and we will do it by respecting our residents and upholding the rule of law. I want to thank those residents for their support and their oppositions to these acts of violence and vandalism. We are strong and compassionate. We love justice and hate bigotry. And we love our city and the future we are building for everyone. Last night, 57 people were arrested, some by the city, some by the county. Some of them were from here, some of them were out of town. But I can tell you that those that were arrested came here to do something that was a dishonor to the legacy and the life of George Floyd, and that invoked the same kind of hatred that took his life. and that's something that we're not going to tolerate in the city of Miami. I saw people with my own eyes that came prepared to vandalize, to loot, and that's not something that's acceptable for us. I want to say briefly in Spanish a few words, and then I'm going to turn it over to Pastor Gaston Smith and Pastor Rich Wilkerson to provide a community perspective. I encourage you to talk to members of our community who are here, and I'm thankful for them being here. This is our community. They represent our community. They've been in the fight for social justice and equal rights reform before I was born, when my dad was the mayor. And they're going to be here long after I'm gone, and their children will be taking up their mantle. Estoy muy agradecido por la comunidad religiosa, por el departamento de policía, en la forma en cual ellos actuaron anoche de una manera calma, a pesar de las situaciones de gran estrés.
You're listening to Mayor Francis Suarez. He is saying a few words in Spanish. He'll go back to English and also take.
Todos los que están aquí presentes menos uno, todos que me han llamado, todos que han ofrecido apoyo, todos que han respaldado.
All right, so he, just to kind of wrap up what he just said, his preliminary comments there, he said he is incredibly proud of the police department and the incredible restraint they showed last night. We had officers being spat on. They had rocks thrown at them. One female officer had her hand broken. She needs to have surgery. They were the target of violence last night, and the mayor's saying they showed incredible restraint. He's incredibly proud of them. He's incredibly proud of the police chief as well. Tonight, because of last night, he's calling it a cooling off period. A curfew is going to be set for 8 p.m. tonight. He says you're allowed to be out, go ahead, protest all you want, do it peacefully, but at 8 o'clock, you have to return to your homes. You will be arrested. I think they're taking a zero tolerance policy on the curfew tonight. So this is citywide, Miami citywide, 8 p.m. curfew tonight. There is a county-wide curfew of 10 o'clock. We don't know if that's going to be adjusted. We may find out a little bit later. As of yesterday, last night, there were 57 people arrested, and the mayor says many of those weren't even from here. They came here with the intent to vandalize, to create destruction, to create problems, and clearly we saw that they did do that. We know that 17 Miami police cruisers, police vehicles, were vandalized at some point yesterday. We saw at least, just the video that we have in-house here, we saw 4 of them just burnt to a crisp. There's nothing left of those cars, just the shell. They were set on fire. They were looted beforehand. We have reports of people finding police items from those cars down the street. So those cars were looted before they were set on fire. We saw others, they had graffiti on them. They were being tagged by those who were creating the chaos last night. So to stave off any more chaos tonight, they're going to implement an 8 o'clock curfew for tonight. That's City of Miami wide. Again, the mayor said you are allowed to protest, you're allowed to be out, do it peacefully, but as of 8 o'clock, everyone has to be off the street. He's calling this a cooling off period. How long that will last, he said he doesn't know. We're going to have to wait and see how the public reacts, if people are actually adhering to the curfew, if they're adhering to peaceful protests and demonstrations. If that's the case, then they will relax that cooling off period. And we just got word here that the county has now changed its 10 o'clock curfew to 9 o'clock. That's county-wide. So if you live in the city of Miami, you have to be off the streets at 8 o'clock. County-wide, anywhere else in the county, you have to be off the streets at 9 o'clock. That was just implemented as we understand it. We have community members making some conversation, making some statements now. Let's listen in.
And if it were not for COVID-19, we would be somewhere in worship today, or this weekend we would be worshiping our God. I'm going to ask my brother, notice what I said, my brother Rich Wilkerson, to come stand next to me, because I want the community to see some things. One of the things that we've been talking about is that it appears as if this is a black issue. But red or yellow, black or white, we're all precious in God's sight. This is not a black issue. This is not a white issue. This is not a brown issue. This is a human issue. And yes, I agree with Mr. Mayor, and I agree with our police chief, and I agree with all of our city officials, managers, and commissioners. All of those officers need to be charged. All of those officers need to be arrested. But here's what we want to say to you today. We want to come to you today, and no matter what your faith is, no matter whether you read the Quran, no matter whether you're Buddhist, no matter whether you read the Torah, no matter whether you read the Bible, all of those faiths suggest that what we do in peace.
Amen.
There are three words that my Savior says that I love to repeat, and that's peace be still. And what we say to Miami today is peace be still. Now listen to me very good. If you go back and look at the protests yesterday, you will see that not only did the police handle themselves in a respectful manner, but they even led the protests. They guided the protests. They helped the protesters. They only put on riot gear when they had to. Our chief was on MSNBC yesterday condemning what happened to George Floyd. Our chief did a video a few days ago that said it was wrong and that it needs to be addressed and that arrests need to take place and that punishment need to be served. And so our mayor, Mayor Suarez, our chief Kalina, our manager, Manager Noriega, our city commissioners, pastors, and leaders, we're saying it's okay to protest. Every one of us have come from somewhere. This is a diverse community. We all understand protests. Even Anglos in the community understand what protest is about. But we should do our protests with peace. Now listen to me. If you look at the videos yesterday, you will see several people that were not even from Miami. They came from all parts of the country to tear up our city. Why would we allow people to come in and tear up our own city that we have to rebuild? I will protest with you because I believe we need some more sensitivity. But we've got to do it in a peaceful manner. So here's what I'm asking. Here's my challenge. Here's my charge. I need pastors, not just black but white, Hispanic, evangelicals. I need all of us to stand together on this issue because all of us say that we love humanity. Not only do we need the faith community, but we need business community. And listen, this is what we really need. We need millennials that have influence. We need hip hoppers. We need rappers. We need those that can connect with the millennial community and say, listen, it's okay to protest. Your message has been heard, but let's not burn down buildings. Let's not set cars on fire. Let's not throw bottles. Let's not hurt anybody in the process. What good does that do to hurt our own community? Lastly, but not least, we've got history here in Miami. We know what it takes to rebuild after a riot. It's not easy. It is not easy. People come into our town and tear it up, and it takes us years to rebuild it. We've got people right now that are unemployed, that are living on stimulus checks. They don't even have a job to go to. They've been dealing with a pandemic for over 60 days. Now, all of a sudden, on top of a pandemic, you're going to burn down a business that employs people. Now, not only do we have a pandemic that we're dealing with of COVID-19, we're now dealing with an outrage pandemic. We're now dealing with a pandemic of racial tension. We're now dealing with a pandemic that's stopping us from going forward, and we're moving backwards. I stand with all of these people today to say Miami shall move forward and not backwards.
Amen.
And we say that to the nation, praise God, that we are a model, to the nation. I know the heart of our mayor, I know the heart of our chief, and I know the heart of these commissioners, I know the heart of these pastors and our managers. We have sit down in a private room. Everybody has said, you know what? We hear the protesters. We got to do something better. We've got to meet together. We've got to say, listen, we got to learn how to treat everybody at the table of brotherhood. We've got to learn how to treat everybody the same. As I said when I opened up, red or yellow, black or white, we're all precious in His sight. Now help me welcome the pastor of the Trinity Church. I pastor Friendship in Liberty City. He pastors Trinity in Miami Gardens. But we're standing together on this issue. And I want you to help me show some love to Pastor Rich Wilkerson.
Thank you so much, Pastor Gaston Smith. And whenever you hear a presentation that powerful, you ought to just sit down after that. Let me just bring some conclusive thoughts. I am so humbled to be able to gather with my brothers to speak on this issue. Most all of us would agree that Solomon, if not was the wisest, certainly one of the wisest in the history of mankind, said in Proverbs 31, verses 8 and 9, that we are called to speak up for those who cannot speak up for themselves. In fact, the New Living Translation says that we are to speak up for those who have been crushed by injustice.
Yes, yes.
And that's what all of this is about. Mr. George Floyd, who Pastor Smith and I will be at his funeral, God willing, in Minneapolis this coming Thursday. Mr. George Floyd was simply moved from Houston momentarily to Minneapolis.
Yes.
Wasn't looking for trouble. And there he is, killed by a man that just was not a man of righteous sense whatsoever. We have agreed on that. We would like to ask that our justice system would do the right thing and arrest the other 3 police officers that were involved in this action. I think a lot of things would calm down, and then these other 3 policemen would have the opportunity to seek justice from the American justice system,
Right.
which all of us have a right to. Beyond that, I want to say this. Without a coming together and a yielding of our own personal issues and beginning to love each other and serve each other, there is no hope for this nation. We are at a boiling point that it is at a place of ridiculousness as the tension is everywhere.
Yes.
Look for those who are trying to make the tension increase and celebrate those who are here for peace, to help us come together as brothers and sisters, as Americans,
Right.
as people who have rights, but know that our God is our final source.
Yes.
I love you all. Thank you for this opportunity.
Awesome.
Mayor Suarez, God bless you all.
Awesome. Thank
And now I want to turn it over to the chairman of our commission, one of my brothers, Brother Keon Hardiman.
I want to remind everyone why we're here today. We're here today because a man was lynched the other day. 4 officers decided to end his life summarily because they accused him of a crime. One of them put his knee into his throat and pressured his head down into the concrete. And the others put the weight of their bodies onto his chest, onto his body. And that caused him distress. That distress led to him falling unconscious, and his unconsciousness caused then his death. Only 1 officer has been arrested, but all 4 are guilty of this murder. Because every single one of those officers heard his cries. Every single one of those officers heard him call for his mother, for his children. Every single one of them heard him cry out for air. I can't breathe. There were people that were there that were saying to those police officers, please check on this man. Please, he's losing consciousness. Please, he's non-responsive. And not one time did any of those officers check to see if that man was okay. That is unacceptable in the United States of America. That is unacceptable anywhere on this earth, that we should allow a man to die
you. That's right.
simply because your pride is bigger than how you feel about him as a human being.
Whatever you like.
And so here we are today saying that protest is right. Everyone should hear this cry. There's not one person, black, white, Chinese, or other, that should look at this and feel that it is okay. Everywhere across this nation, we need to condemn these types of acts, condemn this type of policing, condemn this type of action, so that we can have a society that we all feel proud to live in. I heard a woman ask one day to a white crowd, how many of you would want to be treated the way that America treats blacks in this community? How many of you would trade places with someone of color? And there was not one person that took that challenge. Now, I'm a black man in America, and I'm proud of it. And every single one of us know what it feels like to be in fear of our lives day in and day out.
That's right.
And when you have to have fear of those who are meant to protect you, when you are disrespected by those who have professionalism attached to their name, professional law enforcement officers, when you have the people who are supposed to render you aid cause you death for no reason at all, there is a problem. And I'm glad today that we have protesters of every race that say that this has to stop today. Now, of course, here in Miami, we don't have any jurisdiction whatsoever for the arrest of those other 3 officers.
Yeah. Right.
But there's somebody that hears our voice.
Yeah.
There's somebody that hears our cries.
Yeah.
There's somebody that has common sense. There's somebody that has the ability to act. There's somebody that has the power to make that happen. And what we're asking for is for you to exercise that authority, for you to render that power to aid us in what we're looking for, which is justice for that man that lost his life that day on that concrete.
Yeah.
If one of those officers, just one of them, had the courage to look at the other officer and say, that's enough, he would be here.
Yeah.
Minneapolis would not have burned.
Yep.
DC wouldn't be burning.
Yeah.
LA wouldn't be burning. We wouldn't be on these streets right now talking about this death that we've suffered. But they didn't. And so here we are in Miami, and we're saying, we want you to protest. I'm dressed for protest. We want us to hear everything that we have to say about this issue. But I want to make this very clear. The city of Miami was on the forefront of rendering aid to our community when we had the pandemic start here. We've been giving food to individuals day in and day out. There's not one elected official that I know of from the state of Florida that hasn't participated in feeding our community.
Yes, yes.
The people are still suffering. People still don't have jobs. And just when we start to open up to allow people to work,
Yes.
people who have disguised themselves as protesters are trying to take those jobs away. Every single one of those businesses that are destroyed has people that work in those places, people that are from our community, people from Coconut Grove, Hialeah, Liberty City, people that are from Little Haiti, North Miami, people who are hardworking and need those jobs to continue to feed their family. And so we can allow other people who don't have the same interests as us as protesters to take away the ability for us to care for our families. And so what I ask is this: when you're out there protesting with us, if you see someone clearly violating the law,
Yes, yes.
clearly destroying property, clearly putting you in harm's risk, clearly putting you in a position where you could be armed, you could be considered to be dangerous, and put you in a position where you could be hurt, yet you separate yourselves from them. Part like the sea.
Yes, sir.
Part like the sea and show that person for who they are. Just the same way as those officers should all part from bad officers that show who they really are. And allow us to have calm protests in this community.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank God. Thank God. Thank God.
And I'm gonna break protocol a little bit with my commissioner's permission and do something that Pastor Smith talked about, which is have somebody speak who can speak to the young in our community,
Yes.
a leader in our community. And I'd like Udonis Haslam from the Miami Heat to come up and please say a few words for us.
Come on, love you.
Wow, man! I say, how did I find myself here? You know, just wanted to play basketball and help the community, and there definitely has to be justice for George.
Yes.
There definitely has to be protest for what happened to George.
Thank you.
But I'd be lying if I said that it's been going about the right way. I'd be lying if I said that I'm proud of what's really been going on. I have an obligation to this community because this community has done so much for me. But I also have an obligation to the police department as well, who so many of my family members come here every day.
Yeah.
They work, they take care of people,
Yes.
they make sure people are safe. So there's gotta be a better way.
Yeah.
I stand here right now, confused, torn, frustrated. I wasn't even supposed to be here. I literally text Keon and was like, yo, I just want to come. I just want to be a part of the solution.
Thanks for coming.
I just want to be a part of the solution. We have to have a plan moving forward. It has to be together. Like Keon said, you got to part like the Red Sea when you see that foolishness coming. As a black man, raising black kids in America, I'm scared as hell. Way more scared than I ever was for myself. Way more scared than I ever was for myself. It's not only black men and black lives, it's the other side of who protects those black men and black lives. So now you're saying it's in the community and we gotta worry about the people that are supposed to protect us. And I say to everybody, them people was terrible people before they put that badge on.
Yes.
They was terrible people before they put that badge on, man. For you to stand there and watch that, that ain't got nothing to do with your badge. That has nothing to do with your color. That has nothing to do with your race. That's something inside you that's messed up.
Yes, sir.
That's your soul that ain't right.
Right, right.
So if you can stand there and watch that, I can't say we can blame the whole armed forces and everybody that wear a badge. Ain't no way. Because I know at least 50 or 60 of them that I know personally that would have stepped in right then and there.
Right.
And said, nuh-uh. So there has to be justice. There has to be protests. We have to be heard. We have to move forward strategically. We have to move forward smart. We have to move forward tedious, and we have to be together, man. How we doing it? We can't keep going this way. I know that. For me, I tell people all the time, my impact in this community is not gonna stop just because I ain't shooting the ball as much as I used to.
All right.
Just because I don't get the minutes that I used to get don't mean that I'm just gonna fade away and y'all ain't gonna see me or hear from me. I'm gonna figure out a way to master the role that I have. And the role that I have now is to be a leader.
Yes.
Yeah.
And nobody's always, people say people are born leaders. I couldn't have been born for this. I would have never seen this coming. But I'm here now.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And
man.
Thank you.
it's my responsibility to do something. So Keon got my number. Ken got my number. I'm here, man.
Yeah.
Most of half my family work here, so I know they got my number. So we gonna figure it out, and we gonna figure it out together, man. Just know we gonna figure it out together. I love this city, I love these people, and I'm standing with y'all on everything that y'all believe in and what we believe in, and we're gonna do it the right way.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I'd like to have our vice chairman, followed by Commissioner Carollo, Commissioner Reyes, say a few words as well, and then our chief will wrap things up. And then there are some members of the community that I think are important to speak if the media will patiently wait and have them speak as well.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Ken Russell. I'm Vice Chairman of the City of Miami Commission. I won't repeat what others have said, but I wholeheartedly agree. I'm here as a legislator, as a policymaker for the city, because in order to heal, we need to look at ourselves and improve. Before we improve, we need to admit our faults. And this city is far from perfect in its history and its present. But I am very thankful that my fellow commissioners, our mayor, our manager, and especially our police chief have the heart and will to change and improve. We've done so over recent years, not only by strengthening the Citizen Investigative Panel, giving them more authority for accountability over our police force, by linking their budget to the police budget. That was passed by this commission to make sure that the Citizen Investigative Panel will never have less budget than 1% of the entire police force budget. The Community Relations Board, formed in the wake of the riots that happened here in Miami could have lost its path or its use or its purpose. But even this past year, we decided to maintain that board instead of sunsetting it, because now more than ever, we need relationships with between our community and the police. We need the advice of our community leadership to help guide us. In addition to that accountability from the CIP and the brotherhood that we feel from the CRB, we have the CAB. That's the Community Advisory Board. Because just less than 10 years ago, we were Minneapolis. The Department of Justice came to us and said, you need to improve. And we have been ever since then.
That's right.
I sponsored the formation of the Community Advisory Board to make sure that we are completely in line with the Department of Justice recommendations and regulations. And we hope to see that come to a conclusion this summer as well, because we are improving. And now more than ever, where do we go from here? What policies do we change? We have to admit that we all have implicit bias. I have it. You have it. Even my children in their young age already have implicit bias. And while you cannot see into the heart of a protester and you cannot see into the heart of an officer, you can provide the training that mitigates the outcomes you do not want to see. And so I look forward to welcoming implicit bias training to our force and strengthening our ability to continue to improve as a police force, as policymakers, and as a community. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Joe Carollo. I'm a city commissioner. I'm probably the elected official that's been around at different times the longest and has gone through the most disturbance in the history of the city. Last night, while in the streets, I was reminded of 1980 with Maurice Ferre, the mayor at the time, and I was a 24-year commissioner, and Uncle Charlie, Charles Hadley, pleading with us to make sure that his neighborhood wouldn't be burned. And the outcome of those disturbances took decades, and we still have not overcome the economic destruction that we had then. But I want to say this, that first of all, I need to commend all of our police officers, City of Miami, Miami-Dade County, state troopers. I was in the streets and I saw how many of these officers were insulted, offended, unlike anything that I've seen before. And they've acted so professionally. They stood it. I don't know if many of you would have withstood that. And sadly, it was from not only some of our locals, but from people that was clearly from out of town. And if you don't believe me, look at some of the arrests that were made last night, were forced to be made last night by our police department, and you're going to see that there's quite a few names of people that are not from Miami. They're from different states of our union. And that's part of the problem that we've had here in Miami, and I suspect in different cities of our nation. While every one of the elected officials of our administration are united with protesters, that what happened to George Floyd was plain murder and cannot be condoned in any city in America. Neither can looting, arson, anarchy be condoned. Those that are doing that are destroying the memory and the justice for George Floyd. I doubt very much if he would have ever had wanted something like this to have happened across America. The majority of the businesses, small businesses, by the way, that are being burned down, are being looted, they belong to African Americans, other minorities. How is that going to bring justice to the murder of George Floyd? You know, this morning I was flicking towards different channels in television, and I saw the back end of an interview with the niece of Martin Luther King. And she said something that it stuck with me. She says, the slogan, "No justice, no peace," should be reversed. No peace, no justice, because if there is no peace, you cannot have the wheels of justice move forward, so you do have justice. And what I saw last night was a protest that started correct, peacefully, and then it was taken over by maybe a couple of hundred people. How many were from the outside, I don't know, but there were quite a few, to try to burn, to try to loot, to create anarchy in our city. I have a video that if any one of you would like to see it, I'll be happy to show it to you, how one individual and one individual alone got something in his hands. I don't know what it was, but it was big, and he was breaking and smashing all the windows and the sides of a police unmarked vehicle that clearly had a City of Miami tag, so they knew that it was a government car. He was Hispanic. He had a hat on with the flag of Venezuela. I doubt it very much if he was Venezuelan. What does that have to do with George Floyd or to bring justice to him? It had to do more with someone trying to create division within so many tens of thousands of Venezuelans that have fled into our community because of the tyranny of a socialist narco regime, so that those of us from other Hispanic groups, from other groups, can reject them and think that this is what Venezuelans are doing in Miami. I don't believe that. What does the memory of George Floyd have to do with a couple of people bringing out a Sandinista flag, or someone else bringing out the hammer and sickle of communist China? And this is why all of us, peaceful protesters, people in government, the average Joe citizen that loves America, cannot allow those that don't care for America, that don't care the foundation of freedom and justice of America, that are trying to destroy it, allowed them to go forward. Miami, and when I say Miami, I'm talking about greater Miami, Miami-Dade County. While we have 12.5% of the state's population, we have now some 35% of the COVID-19 cases. We've been hit hard, real hard. Many of our people are been out of jobs. Others have had their hours cut in half. Just when we're trying to start getting out of that, we can't afford to be hit again by another whammy. We can't afford to see our small business burned down. We can't afford to lose more jobs than we've had already. And this is why, as one voice, we're saying we stand, we applaud, we welcome peaceful protesters. But if you're going to go out there to loot, to commit arson, to commit anarchy, it stops here today. You're going to be arrested. We're not going to condone it. It's not going to happen in Miami. You're not going to take jobs from our people. You're not going to destroy small businesses of African Americans and other minorities here in Miami. It's not going to happen. So I suggest you go to another city and carry your agenda somewhere else, because in Miami, you are going to be arrested tonight. And please, look at all the names of all those that have been arrested. I think you'll see some of what I'm talking about right there. But having said that, I'd like to thank, in my final words, the overall first responders for the effort that they have put down through the last almost 3 months of the pandemic, COVID-19 that we have faced, from the medical field to the cashier and bag boy at the grocery stores, to, yes, our police officers, paramedics, firefighters, sanitation workers, and others, that thanks to them, and so many of them risking their lives, in fact, some of them have lost their lives, for us, we've been able to make it as of today. So I plead with the vast majority, the 99% of people that respect the law, that love Miami, that love America, to not let a small group that has a hidden agenda destroy Miami today. Amen. Thank you, Bob. Thank you.
Good.
Sorry. Well, you know, I'm old, sometimes I'm crazy. I'm going to be very brief. I know the sun is hot, and everything has been said. Everything has been said. I'm here not only as a city commissioner, and I'm here as a Miamian. That's right. So, I came to Miami. I was brought to Miami in 1959. 59. And as a teenager, I went into the 60s. And in the 60s, I witnessed the big, I would say, the movement, civil rights movement, and I did admire Dr. King. And I'm going to bring Dr. King because Dr. King, in my opinion, it is the biggest person that I have ever met that was an advocate of change using peaceful means, peaceful way. Dr. King will never condone what's the violence and the looting. Never. It never happened. And when I was a young man, I had the privilege of working with my brother here. Come here. Pastor Don. Yeah. Reverend Don. And going at his church.
Grandfather's church.
Your grandfather's church, and we used to pray together there.
That's right.
And we, at that time, we were trying to bring this community together.
That's right. Still trying.
And we're still trying.
That's it.
And as a Miamian, we're going to be still trying.
Still trying.
Until, we all, man, but we are going to keep on trying and keep on working. And I have a message for those people that want to divide us. Those people that are, I don't know who they pay by. I don't know who pays for their trips going back and forth. Get your gear, get the hell out of here.
That's right.
Okay?
That's right.
We in Miami, you are not welcome.
That's right.
You are not going to divide us.
That's right.
We're going to work together for a community that we are really be representing justice for everybody. Doesn't matter where you come from.
That's right.
Doesn't matter your color, your skin, or what language you speak.
That's right.
Okay, so that's the only thing that I have to say, and sorry for the taking longer than I was.
Yes, my brother.
It is hot, guys. So I'm going to have our chief wrap it up. Chief, you want to come up and say some conclusion remarks? I know Rodney maybe may want to say something. And Steve, if you wanted to say something, I know it's...
I know that it's hot, and I'm really grateful for everyone and your patience. I'll be really brief. Everything really has been said. I'm just really personally very grateful for the community leaders that we have here, that are here because they love the city of Miami. I mean, UD really said it best. You know, we love this city, and that's why everybody's here. Of the 57 people that were arrested, 13 of those 57 live in the city of Miami.
Wow. Wow.
Okay, so we have Minnesota, New York, Georgia, people from outside of the county. That was arrested. And the reason that I think that's significant is, please don't make the mistake of letting someone from outside suck you in to destroy our city. This is a beautiful city.
You work too hard. That's right.
We love, by the way, the folks that are here from Minnesota, New York, and Georgia, and all those places. We love tourists in Miami.
Yes,
that's right.
Come and spend your dollars here. Don't bring hate and anger. And that's just my biggest message here. This press conference, what I've taken from this and listening to you, D, and everybody else is, man, this is about love. This is about love. And you want to come out and protest, we welcome you and we will protect you. And you should be angry with what happened. But don't let that get twisted by someone that has hate in their heart and wants to destroy us and separate us further. Please don't do that. If you see somebody breaking the law, separate yourself from that person, because if you don't, you are culpable. If you don't do that and you become part of that mob, you are culpable. You are part of the mob now. And don't do that. Separate yourself so it becomes very easy for us in the police department to see who is in fact the person that wants to break the law and doesn't care anything about George Floyd and justice for George. And those are my words. And if anybody has any questions for me, I'll be on the side. Sí, el mensaje mío es muy sencillo y muy fácil. A mí me llena el corazón con alegría, con la cantidad de personas que están aquí porque quieren la ciudad de Miami.
All right, listening to Miami Police Chief George Colina right now. He's taking some questions in Spanish. Looks like they're wrapping up this news conference here, so I'm going to hit some of the highlights for you, and then we'll get back to regular scheduled programming here. We heard from the mayor, we heard from commissioners, hearing from the chief right now, heard from pastors in the community, and they all have pretty much the same message that what happened to George Floyd is absolutely awful. It's horrific, and that the arrest of the 3 cops who were involved in that incident, who haven't been arrested, need to be arrested. And they're all saying, yeah, man, you got out and protest. We have to be out and protest. Please do. The police will be there with you. They'll lead the way, really, but you have to protest in a respectful manner. You have to do it right. And what was interesting is that you had the pastors there, Pastor Gaston Smith and Pastor Rich Wilkins, both saying, look, we got to come together as one. We're going to protest. We protest as one. If we have the solutions for this, we got to do it as one. It doesn't matter how you worship, doesn't matter what color your skin is. We have to do this as one. And they also, what I thought was interesting was here said, look, we need the influencers throughout the country to reach out to the millennials, to the younger generation. And just so happens Udonis Haslem was there from the Miami Heat. He was there at this news conference. He said he had no plans on being there, but he felt compelled. Last night he felt compelled that he needed to be there and say a few words. He says, look, we need to protest. We need to protest for George, but we have to do it the right way. We have to be respectful. And he said, quote, I need to do something. I want to be a part of the solution. What that solution is, he doesn't know, but he wants to be a part of the community. He wants to be involved and help figure this stuff out. The police chief talking right now. He's taking questions in Spanish as well as English. We'll have more on that later tonight at 6 o'clock. The chief did say 13 of the 57 people who were arrested last night, only 13 of those 57 live in Miami. All the other people were from outside, and that's what they're saying. These are agitators. These are instigators from not even in our state. They're from New York. They're from Minnesota. They're from Georgia. And they're saying, don't let these people suck you in when protesting and creating havoc like we saw last night. So just 13 of the people that were arrested last night actually live in the city of Miami. Mayor, he started off saying that he wants to congratulate the police chief and his officers. They showed incredible restraint last night. They were being spit on. They had rocks thrown at them, and some of them were hefty rocks. They were darn right boulders. They had water thrown at them. One officer, female officer, had her hand broken. She needs to have surgery. And despite all of that, these officers showed great restraint, and that's what the mayor is saying. He congratulates them, and he respects the way they handled the situations last night. As a result, there's an 8 o'clock curfew in Miami. That's citywide. The county had one at 10 o'clock, but they have now revised that. It's a 9 o'clock curfew. That's countywide, but if you live in the city of Miami, you have to be off the streets by 8 o'clock. Again, 57 people arrested. This is the news conference just updating everything that happened last night and also how we're going to move forward. It appears there's going to be a zero tolerance policy. If you're not off the streets in the city of Miami by 8 o'clock, you will be arrested. If you're not off the streets in the county of Miami-Dade, you will be arrested by 9 o'clock. So that is just the latest here from this news conference. The chief still taking questions. Again, we'll have much more on this coming up tonight at 6 o'clock. And on the right side, you can see this is the protests that were happening yesterday. Now, this is actually in Fort Lauderdale. That's actually a live picture from Fort Lauderdale. This is how it started yesterday in Miami-Dade. They started out peacefully, just congregating like this over at the Friendship Torch, the Torch of Friendship. And then they made their way into the streets and they started marching. They made their way onto I-95 in downtown Miami, blocking traffic from both lanes, north and southbound, cut off the freeway. Police actually ended up doing that for quite some time, even though the protesters were no longer up there. Then those protesters moved over to the police department where this news conference is happening right now. And as we understand it, there are protesters there at the police department where this news conference is going on. You see the signs being held up, Black Lives Matter. We've seen those we've seen them here. We've seen them up in Fort Lauderdale. Just all over the place. I want to check in now with the mayor. The mayor speaking once again. He's taking questions.
So as the resident millennial, I guess it's proper for me to speak. And as Pastor had already mentioned, you know, how do millennials that are out protesting and out in the streets really do something with that pent-up energy? I would suggest that the challenge is use that energy to protest at the civilian investigative panel. Unlike most jurisdictions, the city of Miami has an outlet for police officers that are involved in misconduct that are looking for accountability. Your only option in the city of Miami is not just to protest or go to the streets. You can come to our office. You can file a complaint. There's many things that individuals that are not only city residents can do with our department that people behind me have supported time and time again. Obviously, it's not perfect, and we're hoping things become better, but we're working towards those solutions. And I think it's vital and important that people that think that there's no options, that there's nowhere to go, that there's no procedural justice, know that our department works day in and day out to hold officers accountable. And that will not change, and it's only bolstered in this moment. I think it's vitally important that millennials, that people out in the streets understand that our department is a resource. It is fully funded, as the mayor has mentioned, and we're looking to make it better each and every day. With your help to hold leaders accountable, to bolstering the resources that we need, not only administratively, but in our office day to day, we can do those things. Use that collective energy that you have right now at our meetings. Use that collective energy to ensure that items that our department has are pushed forward, that your local leaders understand why our department is vital. That is what's necessary. Use that energy appropriately, and we're here to help.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate you. Got it. Come you see that? Yeah. You see that? Those and just. Yeah.
Last question, Joe.
A lot of the people who are protesting are talking about frustration that is mounted over time. Frustration that is not new, frustration from generations, from decades. Tell me a little bit about what you think of the differences between civil disobedience and lawlessness at a time of such great generational frustration.
There's no group of people that have been more frustrated about injustice than black people in the United States of America. When we were brought here through force and treated like chattel, made to work for no pay, then when given freedom, relegated to certain communities, given unfair living conditions, and then having to still fight throughout this time, in our parents' lifetimes, as a millennial, for the ability to vote, for fair housing, for the ability to express yourself, to be able to say to someone, I am somebody. There is no greater frustration than this group of people. And it's about time that other people feel how we feel about it. And so when I look at the protesters, I say to myself that they are merely assisting us in amplifying this voice. And I think it's going to take everyone to do that. White, black, gay, straight, people are from America and those who are not. That everything that we're experiencing is something that is unacceptable. And so civil disobedience is important because civil disobedience is how you show that you're not happy with your conditions and that those who are causing your conditions should refrain from doing so. And if all of us continue to act with civil disobedience, then those people who will have the ability to act and the responsibility to act will listen. Because when they say no justice, no peace, it doesn't mean destruction. It means peace of mind. It means things don't go on as usual. It means that we should pay attention to what's actually happening in this time period. And so here we are in times, once again, of civil disobedience. But we're saying to everyone that's within our community that we're not going to allow people who are from outside of our community to burn down our community and then go back to sleep in their beds in their community at the end of the night.
Last question, and we're going to close.
Dígame, ¿podría decirme otra vez? Sí, como expresó el comisionado Carollo, hay pruebas y también hay películas de una persona que traía y estaba enarbolando la bandera con la voz y el martillo.
All right, so you have a commissioner taking questions in Spanish here. This was obviously a news conference with the city commissioners, the mayor, the police chief, a few pastors from the community as well to talk about the civil unrest that we saw last night, the lawlessness that we saw last night. Every one of them saying, look, we really want you to protest. We need to protest in George Floyd's name. We need to be heard, but we need to do this right. It's coming up on 4 o'clock here. We're at 3:30 almost. We have protests going on right now. On the right side of your screen, that's a live picture from Fort Lauderdale where you see a very peaceful protest. And again, this all started very peaceful. This is all peaceful yesterday. This is how it started yesterday, and then things just got out of hand. Water started to be thrown at the police officers when all of those marchers ended up back at the police department in downtown Miami. You had a line of police officers blocking off the entrance and the Sally Port there on the backside of the police department, and somebody threw water and it just kind of exploded from that point on. And then we saw the civil unrest that unfolded throughout the night. We saw fires, police cars, 4 of them, at least 4 of them that I have counted in video that I've seen here in-house. At least 4 of them absolutely torched. 17 vehicles in all were vandalized and had graffiti on them in some way, shape, or form. So again, the mayor is saying we have an 8 o'clock curfew in the city of Miami because of what happened last night. He's calling this a cooling off period. How long will be an 8 o'clock curfew? We don't know. It just depends on how these protests go. And if we see more civil unrest tonight, then he'll extend that cooling off period. So 8 o'clock, the city of Miami has a curfew. The county has one. The county has one for 9 o'clock. It was supposed to be at 10 o'clock as of last night, but the county went ahead and made the change to 9 o'clock tonight. Everybody has to be off the streets in Miami by 8, throughout the county by 9 o'clock. We have much more of what is going on. The protests, sorry, are we staying with us? I'm talking to my producer here. We are staying with us, okay. So we have protests going on in Fort Lauderdale right now. We haven't seen any in Miami. We know there were a few that were supposed to be scheduled throughout Miami-Dade County, but we've not seen any pictures or any video out of there just yet. If we do get that, we'll certainly bring it to you on air as well as online. This is the protest that is happening in Miami. It looks like Mayor Suarez is engaged in a conversation with one of those protesters. She's holding a sign, and she has a gaggle of people around her as well. This is what the mayor's talking about. Please, go ahead, protest. He's clearly going to answer their questions. Let's take a listen if we can.
The people who are here that really care about our community, that are really protesting, legitimate. Not those that want to burn down our city, not those that want to divide us, but those that want to unite us. And I'm waiting to meet with anybody. I'll give you my cell phone number right now.
I'll take it. Let me take it.
It's 305.
When can we see these changes? How do I make sure my friends aren't?
305-992-3342. 305-992-3342. Text me. We'll get together a group of people and we'll come up with a strategy together.
Thank you.
Are you considering any new training policies
Absolutely.
for police officers, like how to interact with people on a normal basis
We are.
instead of using force?
We are. We review that on a continual basis. We have a civilian investigative panel, which is people. We fully funded it.
There's never been charges pressed in all of history in the state of Florida for any criminal activity, violent or otherwise, against arrest. These are not guilty people and they're not violent crimes. There's no accountability. There's no consequences. What is going to change?
That has to change.
Those are words. What are actions?
I think you see our police department, our police chief, our officers, our executive staff.
You're now punishing all of Miami citizens and limiting their freedoms to move to beaches, hotels, restaurants as a consequence of misbehavior of this. Okay, but that's not the way to unite people and recognize that a wrong has been done. This is a way to limit and silence people, and that's not democracy. So what government are you running?
It's not the city of Miami that's doing
Yes,
that.
the police are here to serve and protect. Okay, this was a check-cashing, alleged suspicion. Okay, it's not guilty. Even if he was guilty, it's not punishable at all by any kind of violent consequences.
Who's he? What are you talking about?
George Floyd.
No, he should have never. He should have never died.
Today.
He should have never died in the first
He should
place.
never have died, along with the
And we condemn
thousands of Americans who die every year in the hands of police custody.
We all universally condemn them.
We don't trust the police anymore.
It's understandable.
And if they agree with us, they should be on this side, marching with us, like leaders in other states and other cities have been doing.
Following what happened to George Floyd, did you guys immediately the next day meet with your officers to address some of the ways they interact with arrests?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Don't you think maybe you guys take some?
Here, you gotta take this. I gotta go live.
I think it was despicable what happened. And not only him, but the officers that were around him should also be arrested. Not just the officer that committed the crime. Those that were around him should also be arrested, and everyone here said that.
How do you address the excessive force that was used yesterday against the protesters, the peaceful protesters?
You know, we allowed the protest to happen very peacefully. It happened for
It's our
about
legal
4
right.
hours.
You didn't allow anything.
It happened for 4 or 5 hours on the street. We actually had people on bikes that were actually allowing the protesters to go through and the traffic to go through so that there wasn't any interaction between the protesters and those who are just regular residents. And then unfortunately things happened because some people were looting and were damaging property.
Well, there was documentation showing that there was a tear gas canister thrown at protesters first, at peaceful protesters.
Sir, can you explain why you shut down Miami Transit for this?
I don't run Miami Transit. That's Miami-Dade County. It's like I don't run the beach.
I understand, but do you have any idea about
A lot of the youth yesterday were out and they were protesting, and at the beginning of the day was very peaceful.
And I came out here, and I was with them, and I met with them out here, and I came here during the middle of the protest.
And then the sun went down and changed.
Yeah.
What about any programs to help the youth and millennials?
Absolutely.
We want to speak our voice, to give us training in public speaking.
We are, but we can always do better. We can always do better. That's why I gave you my cell phone number. Feel free to reach out to me, text me.
We've always been great. I think a lot of us we really want to feel like our voices are heard. So maybe something where we get together, like candle lighting vigilance, or something that you've done a great job.
Thank you guys. God bless you guys. Thank you.
We won't stop until we see change. Yeah.
Justice for George Floyd.
Words don't mean anything.
All right, so you just saw Mayor Francis Suarez of the city of Miami fielding some questions from very impassioned protesters who were out there holding signs. He was saying, look, we said, please protest, but things got out of hand, and you heard people say, well, you threw the tear gas at us first, and, people complaining about how things were handled last night. Meanwhile, the mayor thinks that the police department showed great restraint in what they were dealing with. Actually, you heard the mayor also giving out his phone number, his cell phone number to one of the protesters, said, look, you got a question, you got a complaint, call me, we'll talk about it. He also talked about the civilian investigative panel that looks over the police department, if you will. If there are any complaints, if they do investigations, basically it's just a panel of community members who do the oversight for the police department. They'll investigate any complaints, and if how things are done, they'll investigate that and come up with solutions and suggestions. So they're talking about community members getting involved with the CIP. So the mayor talking with a number of protesters there, took a few questions, gave out his phone number, and really tried to calm what they were talking about. Let's go to Jamie Garola. He's live right now. You were just at that news conference, Jamie.
Yeah, pretty remarkable what happened after that press conference. The mayor was standing a little bit ahead of me over here, and you can see here there's a barricade on the street, and there was a small amount of protesters out here. They actually yelled the mayor's name, and Mayor Francis Suarez came over here and took some questions. I believe he took about 2 or 3 questions, and he actually gave out his personal cell phone and told the people that he was talking to that he wanted to create some sort of a committee to our work group to go ahead and discuss about the issues that are affecting this community. Some of the highlights from what they told us about earlier today is that they're really trying to encourage peaceful protests. They say yesterday 57 arrests were made after the protests, but they believe that a lot of those people were from out of town just wanting to wreak havoc on our city, and that they were basically just numbing the message that was really intended during what was supposed to be a peaceful protest yesterday. But as you might remember, those images yesterday of all those cars catching on fire, people going on the interstate and stopping traffic, these are just some of the people who tried to get some questions into the mayor, but pretty remarkable. I hear an interruption there, I'm not sure. You guys still on me? Okay, so sorry about that. I heard something in my ears. So basically, for more than an hour here, city officials, police, and even UD came out here to go ahead and try and basically encourage the public to keep things peaceful tonight. We know that there is a demonstration at 4 o'clock today in Overtown, and then there was also another one at the Freedom Torch that began at noon, and possibly, I believe, a second one. This crowd that was out here earlier today has dispersed just a little bit. Perhaps they're going to the Overtown protest. That protest, we got a press release specifically about that, and the intention is for it to be peaceful and to honor the memory of George Floyd and to highlight the systematic issues that a lot of people feel when it comes to racial relations between police officers and the general public. So that's pretty much what's happening here. It's breaking down now, and of course it's going to be a long night. We expect to see how these protests unfold, but again, the main message here tonight is that everybody wants this to be peaceful, and they do encourage those peaceful protesters that if they do see bad actors, to basically get away from them as quickly as possible. Don't get swallowed into that, and to let them stand out on their own so that we can differentiate who's here to cause trouble and who's here to send a message. Keith?
Yeah, Jay, I think the line was, don't let them suck you in. Jamie, just a handful of protesters, is that all that's there over your shoulder there?
Yeah, well, now this is just a handful, but I would say there was maybe a dozen or two earlier. There was a group that came by, they started chanting and singing. I wasn't sure what it is that they were saying because we were trying to listen to the press conference, but they must have seen the activity here and thought that this would be a good place to go ahead and get their message directly to the leaders as opposed to doing it on the street. But the crowd has dwindled a little bit to about these 5 or 6 people. We don't know. Do any of you guys want to talk? No, okay, but you can read their signs: Black Lives Matter, defund the police, close the jails. Well, just remember, we ask you to. You do want to talk? Yeah. Okay, you're on live TV, so we just ask you to keep it respectful because we don't know who's watching. Okay. Well, you know what? Forget that. So that's not part of what we're trying to get here, and I don't think that's the message intended. So, Keith, we're going to send it back to you.
Yeah. Real quick, one more question for you. Did you get a sense that there's a zero tolerance policy for the curfew? If they're out on the streets after 8 o'clock in the city of Miami, they will be arrested. Is that your sense?
Yeah, one of the commissioners came down pretty hard, and he said that it will not be tolerated. But, Keith, I remember covering when Black Lives Matter first started doing this about 5 years ago. They took over the interstates and marching. There's only so much police can do without escalating tensions. So, I mean, it's going to be hard for them to just start arresting everybody. But that is the message that they're trying to iterate, is that everybody has to be home, 8 o'clock, time to go and wrap things up.
All right, Jamie Garola reporting live for us there, downtown Miami at the police department. Jamie, thank you. We'll see you later tonight at 6.
All right.
All right, back at live pictures now. Is this Fort Lauderdale, guys? I believe this is the peaceful protest happening in Fort Lauderdale right now. We heard during Jamie's report there that somebody was speaking at the time. I'm not sure what the message was, but you got to assume that it's Black Lives Matter. You know, we need peace. We need to be able to protest, all in the name of George Floyd. So these are happening. Apparently, another one's happening at 4 o'clock. This in Miami. Okay, I understand we're going to have the chopper up here momentarily. What are these pictures of? Is this AAA? There's okay. This is a AAA, folks. This is the American Airlines Arena that appears that protesters have now shown up there. We're seeing these smattering of protests throughout the area, not huge volumes of people like we saw yesterday. That could change, though. The one that is scheduled for 4 o'clock in Liberty City, we imagine that one will probably have some pretty big numbers because it was done on social media. That news conference or that newsletter was put out yesterday, so a lot of people are going to be aware of it. But this is a live look at American Airlines Arena where a protest has broken out. Friendship Tower, not far from here. We know that we had some protests there yesterday. Earlier today, there was one scheduled for noon, I believe, that has dissipated as we understand it. A few of those protesters did make it to the police department. But right now, it seems to be peaceful. You got traffic running through here. No problems at least this vantage point. Obviously, that is all subject to change. As we saw yesterday, it just takes one person to get people going. And you can have chaos in a matter of minutes. So we're hoping that that's not the situation here. As we take a live look at American Airlines Arena, where another protest has busted out. It looks like about 100 people there. Yeah, so we got protests happening throughout South Florida. Are we staying with this, guys? Okay, we'll be staying with this. So the news conference just wrapped up with the mayor. It went about 45 minutes or so. The mayor really applauding the police department and how they were able to handle things yesterday. He said they showed, quote, incredible restraint. When you consider what they were being put through, you had protesters who were spitting on them. You had protesters throwing rocks at them, throwing water bottles, full water bottles at them, just trying to instigate them. And they held incredible restraint. They didn't fight back. They didn't arrest anybody, other than 57 people were arrested, but those were all more related to curfew issues, as a curfew was put in place like last night at 10 o'clock. And of those 57 people who were arrested, only 13 of them actually live in the city of Miami. And that was one of the things that Commissioner Joe Carollo was talking about, is that you have so many people, so many instigators, so many aggravators who are coming here from out of state to essentially tear up our city and instigate and cause the chaos and the riots that we saw last night. They're not even from here. They're from New York. They're from Minnesota, from Georgia. So just 13 of those people were actually from Miami. All the rest were from out of town. Certainly out of the city, but many of them were from out of the state, according to the arrest reports and the commissioner as well. So as a result of last night, we now have an 8 o'clock curfew in the city of Miami. You can certainly protest up until 8 o'clock, but at that point, you have to be off the streets. And speaking of protests, let's go out to Willard Shepard. He's live right now at the AAA with more on that protest going on right now. Willard?
Yeah, Keith, let me show you the scene out here behind me. This was initially scheduled for over in the Overtown area. There are people out here who are part of the group called Dream Defenders, and also some of you may have heard of Black Lives Matter. They initially started to have their rally over in Overtown, about a mile and a half from here. But there were some logistical issues that they had dealing with that, and now they have decided to come out here to this location in front of the American Airlines Arena to come here and have their voices heard. As you had mentioned there, Keith, very important. We heard the police chief here in Miami say that they were not going to allow people to get into Bayside and this to get out of control, and they did not do that last night at all in terms of the people that they had deployed out there. And they were also imploring people to do this and do this peacefully today. We haven't seen any trouble out here whatsoever at all. Of course, that was a case here in downtown Miami yesterday, as well as when the protest about sunset is when the trouble actually started in terms of the violence that unfortunately erupted last night here. So we just want to pan off and show you kind of what this is like there at the foot of the American Airlines Arena. And one message I think that's very important, Keith, to get out right now is that the Citizens Investigator Panel, which is a panel that really looks into the actions of police after they have already been investigated by the Internal Affairs Department. They actually spoke out today there alongside the mayor, saying that they are there for citizens here in the city of Miami who are upset with the police, feel they have been unfairly treated by the police department, and they want to be able to speak out, and they want the people of the city of Miami to know that there is another outlet to complain about police actions in addition to filing an internal affairs complaint. So we don't know at this point, Keith, that this particular group will be leaving this location. We're prepared to walk wherever they go, or they will be staying here at this particular location throughout the course of the afternoon and the evening. The City of Miami Police Department and also Miami-Dade County Police have their tactical teams all on alert as well to be prepared for anything that transpires. And again, they are encouraging everyone to execute their free speech rights, but to do that in a peaceful manner. They are chanting right now. One chant we've heard is no justice, no peace. We're going to try, when the traffic stops here, I'm going to try to go across and get a little more in terms of interaction with the individuals that are there. We have to always realize as well, we're doing all of this in the course of COVID-19 and the pandemic. And I'm going to ask Manny to walk with me as we come across the street here and see what people have to say here about this who have come to the rally. Excuse me, ladies. Willard Shepard with NBC here in Miami. We're live on NBC here in Miami. I see you with your sign.
Yes.
First of all, what's your name and tell me why you're here?
Megan, and we're protesting police brutality and the effects of structural racism on black folks in Miami-Dade and around the country.
Okay, do you live here in Miami-Dade County?
Yes.
Okay, tell me about what just your thoughts are of what happened last night.
I really don't know enough to have a comment, but I know that the police were out of pocket and should not have been treating civilians like that. There's no reason to throw tear gas and rubber bullets that can maim people in the midst of a pandemic.
You think, from what you said to me earlier, that there's some larger structural issues here that need to be resolved?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Just the country was founded on structural racism, and I think that it will continue unless we show up and demand change. And this is what it's going to take.
Okay, let me talk to your friend here. Tell me, first of all, your name. You live here in Miami-Dade County?
Mackenzie, yes.
Yes. Tell me why you're here.
I'm here for the same reason. Police brutality has to stop. I mean, what else? You got to do anything that you can. If you have to come out and you have to protest, then that's what you have to do. But we can't be silent any longer, especially white people.
Was the video that we all unfortunately saw of Mr. Floyd losing his life, was that a catalyst for you?
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, things like this happen every day, and a lot of it's not on the news, so everything.
We appreciate you speaking with us. Thank you very much. Maddie, if you want to pan around, just want to get an idea more of the size of the crowd out here and why so many people have decided to come out. Let me go over and speak to these young ladies here. Excuse me, ladies. Willard Shepard, Manny with NBC. We're live on NBC, so let's keep that in mind, okay? Tell me why you're here. What is your sign? You have a sign here as well. Could you please speak to us? We want to really get an insight of why you're out here.
No, for sure. So my sign says the Mater Dei Stanford experiment, and we're here just to protest Black lives that have been out here, and then we are murdered brutalistly on the streets. And again, I don't think it's something that should be normalized. This is something that should be actually, like, we have to stand up and face it. at the end of the day. And again, Stanford experiment represents people having a little bit of power and abusing that power, and that's what the police system is today. So we're trying to just be here to stop that at the end of the day.
Tell me about seeing the video, sadly, of Mr. Floyd and your thoughts, and do you think that that was the reason, obviously, that has motivated so many people, but personally for you, what did that mean to you?
No, it's not the reason that we're motivated to be out here at all. That's by any reason that means. It's just another black life that has been here, but we have had countless black lives that we have murdered countlessly in the streets, and like, it's not only one person, and I don't think one person has the person to empower that movement, but it's been a repeated offense.
Yeah, well, what I was saying to you is obviously there are a lot of structural things, economic conditions, a huge number of factors that lead people to this point. But seeing that earlier during the week and what had transpired with that was something people of your generation, and being able to have cell phones and seeing this on social media, and people actually saw him lose his life. Personally, when you saw that, how did that empower you even more to send your message out?
It's definitely affected anybody in this race, or anybody in this race, and anybody in this generation should be empowered or should feel some type of effect towards this. At the end of the day, they should feel some type of effect. And if you don't feel some type of effect, then that's actually a problem. But yeah, you're part of the problem. But it's not like, no, it's not like we try to come out here and try to cause a problem at all, but we're just standing up for something at all, like something in itself.
We appreciate you taking the time to express your views to us.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. Okay, so you see the crowd growing here out now. There are a lot of people, that who have been honking their horns as they go by. And there are a couple of speakers up there giving their voices to this crowd right now. We see signs that say justice for George Floyd. One of them say their names of people that the woman was just referring to, African Americans who have lost their lives, unfortunately, in incidents with police over the last several years. People are holding up signs about other individuals who have unfortunately lost their lives as well here, not just in South Florida, but across the country. So quite a turnout here. Another sign there says, I cannot breathe. We're checking with people as I do this on the air as to whether or not they are willing to be able to speak with us and have a willingness to speak to us. So this is one of the protests that was out here. We are coming over, excuse me, ladies, Willard Shepard with NBC. No? Can we talk to any of you? No? Okay.